Hello and welcome to a new podcast series with Leon John Russell, Luigi and Stephen Dean discussing from A Course in Miracles, the Manual for Teachers, and cross-referencing with the spiritual classic by Nisargadatta Maharaj, I Am That. Enjoy. How are you guys?
I'm fine, my mate. And how are you? And how are you, Lucy? Good to see you again.
Yeah, just don't make me laugh.
Well, I'll try not to.
If you laugh too much, you're going to wake up. I want to wake up. I like my grumpy dream.
I've got a question for you, actually. In the course where it says the Son of God remembered not to laugh, great bit of symbolism. We have like a road outside the front of ours which goes down to the shops, quite a small road, and I like to sit in the van with my hand ready to press the horn, and then when somebody walks past I'll press the horn and scare the life out of them, and they spill all of their shopping on the floor, and I just find it hilarious, and it helps me to remember to laugh, and I just wondered, is that the ego or the Holy Spirit?
It's the holy ego.
Well, I think you better ask a woman who's shopping you just spilt all over the place.
Definitely the holy ego.
Do you reckon that was God's work, or just me being a bit of a
Well, the script is written, which means it was meant to happen.
Exactly.
It's all scripted, you know. Look, it says so.
And more importantly, it was meant to happen because they were clearly not thinking happy thoughts, and so you were meant to scare them. It's their fault.
It was her fault. She had to go back and buy another dozen eggs as well.
That's it. Exactly.
It's nothing to do with me. I was guiltless through the whole thing.
The whole thing, yeah. You were scripted.
So today, what are the levels of teaching? Excellent. I'm going to get straight into it. The teachers of God have no set teaching level. Each teaching learning situation involves a different relationship at the beginning, although the ultimate goal is always the same: to make of the relationship a holy relationship, in which both can look upon the Son of God as sinless. There's no one from whom a teacher of God cannot learn, so there is no one whom he cannot teach. However, from a practical point of view, he cannot meet everyone, nor can everyone find him. Therefore, the plan includes very specific contacts to be made for each teacher of God. There are no accidents in salvation. Those who are to meet will meet, because together they have the potential for a holy relationship. They are ready for each other. The simplest level of teaching appears to be quite superficial. It consists of what seem to be very casual encounters, a chance meeting of two apparent strangers in an elevator, a child who is not looking where he is going running into an adult by chance, two students happening to walk home together. These are not chance encounters. Each of them has the potential for becoming a teaching learning situation. Perhaps the seeming strangers in the elevator will smile to one another. Perhaps the adult will not scold the child for bumping into him. Perhaps the students will become friends. Even at the level of the most casual encounter, it is possible for two people to lose sight of separate interests, if only for a moment. That moment will be enough. Salvation has come. It's difficult to understand that levels of teaching the universal course is a concept as meaningless in reality as in time. The illusion of one permits the illusion of the other. In time, the teacher of God seems to begin to change his mind about the world with a single decision, and then learns more and more about the new direction as he teaches it. We've covered the illusion of time already, but the illusion of levels of teaching seems to be something different. Perhaps the best way to demonstrate that these levels cannot exist is simply to say that at any level of the teaching-learning situation is part of God's plan for atonement, and his plan can have no levels, being a reflection of his will. Salvation is always ready and always there. God's teachers work at different levels, but the result is always the same. Each teaching-learning situation is maximal, in the sense that each person involved will learn the most that he can from the other person at that time. In this sense, and in this sense only, we can speak of levels of teaching. Using the term in this way, the second level of teaching is a more sustained relationship in which, for a time, two people enter into a fairly intense teaching-learning situation and then appear to separate. As with the first level, these meetings are not accidental, nor is what happens to be the end of the relationship a real end. Again, each has learned the most he can at the time, yet all who meet will someday meet again, for it is the destiny of all relationships to become holy, and God is not mistaken in his Son. The third level of teaching occurs in relationships which, once they're formed, are lifelong. These are teaching-learning situations in which each person is given a chosen learning partner who presents him with unlimited opportunities for learning. These relationships are generally few because their existence implies that those involved have reached a stage simultaneously in which the teaching-learning balance is actually perfect. This does not mean that they necessarily recognize this. In fact, they generally do not. They may even be quite hostile to each other for some time, and perhaps for life. Yet should they decide to learn it, the perfect lesson is before them and can be learned. And if they decide to learn that lesson, they become the saviors of the teachers who falter and may even seem to fail. No teacher of God can fail to find the help he needs. So I think I'll jump in with something there that I've highlighted here. And I think it's an interesting starting point because of the fact that in one of the later sections, when it says, is reincarnation so? And he says, ultimately, no, because not one life is possible, let alone a number of lives. But if the concept's helpful, then of course it's fine to use that concept. So with that in mind, when it says here that the two people may be quite hostile to each other for some time, and perhaps for life. So I think that's kind of interesting because where's that notion of like reconciliation where, they realize what's going on together if they're spending an entire lifetime hostile to one another?
Just have different ideas about how they get there. That's what it is, isn't it? I mean, there used to be a guy on Facebook, maybe no names, he's a great bloke and he's a friend of mine. But whoever I posted something, he'd always come on saying I was wrong. And in the end, I said to him, look, I said, like everything I say, you're like a vulture waiting for me to post something so you can swoop down and tell me that I'm wrong. I'm not wrong. I'm just approaching it a different way to what you are. And he ended up blocking me, and but eventually come back as a friend. Then we got bust up again. I ended up blocking him. Then he wanted to do something. He couldn't do it unless I unblocked him. But we ended up good friends, actually. But it was all to do with him not agreeing with me. I mean, what he said made sense as well, but I wouldn't dare say to you that's rubbish. That's stupid. You're wrong. He wasn't wrong. He was right in his own way. And that's what I mean by being hostile. It wasn't like we didn't hated each other or anything like that. I just couldn't see why he was so negative about my point of view. When I didn't, I wasn't reflecting anything onto him about his being negative. I was being negative, telling him he was like a vulture and all that, I suppose. But then again, you have to defend yourself sometimes. Like he was. So that's that was. I agree with that. Like,
was he trying to accept the atonement for you?
I don't know what he was trying to do, really. But it was what it was to me. What it was, he accepted that the course ad verbatim. It was about God thinking. Intrinsically, I was saying that God didn't think. God knew. He doesn't need to think. And he was saying, well, how comes he keeps saying God's thought was this and God extended his thought? I said, look, that is just playing with words. You know, as I said last week, when words are all you've got to describe the indescribable, you have to jolly them around a bit. You know, that was exactly the sort of tit for tat we were having about whether God thinks and whether he don't think. Or let's just tittle tattle, really.
But when Ken Wapnick says, you know, read the course like a giant poem, and he's not talking about sort of a rhythmical meter. He's talking about the freedom of that format, the way that you can allow words to be picture painting imagery, and therefore if things do contradict themselves technically, as you would expect to read them in an instruction manual, you've already taken on this approach that there's something poetic about the construct. So therefore you lighten up and you don't get hung up on whether there's a contradiction, because also in the journey of the material of the course, it does say things in opposite to what it said earlier, because it's expecting to meet you at a progressed point of understanding from where it made the suggestion earlier.
100%.
Yeah, you've understood the license that they give you to read these words in different ways to match them up until we get a grasp of what they're actually saying, you know, and how you interpret what they're saying. But like I say, like Lewis always says about his hub and all these spokes leading to the hub, and I mean, he was on the other side of the wheel, but he's coming in like that. You see, we both meet in the middle in the end. What he was saying intrinsically was right, whether God thinks or he don't think. But what he was right originally is just that he wanted me to have the same opinion as him. Then it wouldn't be my opinion then, would it? You know?
Exactly. Well, what you'll see very often is in the dream, everything is a variety of depth of understanding, levels. In absolute reality, there's no level. And the course alludes and takes us towards the non-dual, but takes us through dualistic concepts, brother, etc., etc. Ultimately, that's why it's not meant to be discussed from a let me argue with you my point of view. I hear your point of view, I agree or I disagree. If I agree, it reinforces my point of view. If I disagree, it reinforces my point of view. But I don't have to speak up and verbally disagree with you. How insecure are you about your own belief if you need to impose your understanding on someone else? And that's what ministry is, church-going ministry is about. It's let me try and convert as many people as possible. And if I can get them to agree with what I think I believe, then it reinforces my belief, and perhaps I'm a little bit more positive about my belief. That's the whole problem with PG-21, everybody, with fucking teachers. Everybody wants to be right. Here's my point of view. Use it, don't use it. I hope that for your sake, it brings you peace, it brings you understanding, it brings you clarity, which reinforces the peace, present moment awareness. I'm not going to enter into debate with you. The reason I think the three of us are friends is because both of you agree with me because I'm always right. Because we're all mature enough, as crazy as Steve seems to be.
No, I've got certificates to prove it.
I rest my case. The reason we get along is I don't know whether we all agree on everything or not, but we seem to be heading in the same direction. And you've both said things in your talks and your various talks that has reinforced and refined my understanding, and I'm grateful for it. You've also both said things that made me stop and think and hang a second. And now, We know there's no real thinking. I'm not thinking. Lou's not thinking. The dreaming mind's thinking. But the I am dreams and thinks it dreams. So are there levels or are there no levels? Even this passage, are the level, what are the levels of teaching? Well, ultimately, there's no set teaching levels. Ultimately, everything is absolute reality. But while we're awakening to self, there seems to be levels. It's like the whole story of reincarnation, as you touched on. While we seem to be dreaming, we seem to be reincarnating, and some people have past life recollection, and under regression, they can recall multiple lives and life in the spirit world. Is that true? It's true in the dream. Is it true in absolute reality? No. But we need concepts in order to recognize the truth. We need negation, the neti. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that. To recognize I am. And what's the final I am? I am full fucking stop. God is the end. But if you just say to someone struggling with trauma or whatever they're going through, this isn't true, the whole world's an illusion, you're not really suffering, you're just dreaming you are, it's not going to help them. And so there are teachers at various levels. I could say there is no Jesus. That's going to upset a lot of people, course people specifically. Now, in absolute reality, there's no Jesus. In the dream content, there was a Jesus 2,000 years ago. There seems to be a voice for Jesus now. But ultimately, is there a Jesus? If God is, full stop, no, there's no Jesus. Every character in the dream is a character in the dreaming mind of the Christ. What's the Christ? Just essence energy, the extension of God's essence energy, the extension of God's love eternally. But if you take someone that needs the concept, the belief, the objectification of a savior, hand-holding, guidance, a voice, by all means. But if you really want to dial into absolute reality, don't dial into Luigi Poo, because Luigi Poo is going to take you straight to the absolute. And I'm not going to sit and discuss relative reality because there's no point in it for me. That's what I teach. Now, you take someone like Keith Kavanaugh, for example. Keith Kavanaugh teaches the truth. And Keith is beautiful. You watch Keith teach different levels. He's got that beautiful ability to go, Jesus said, and the next thing he's talking absolute reality. Ken Wapnick used to do that. I'm not interested in doing that. Okay, so there seems to be a certain level of student. Of course, the most advanced students will find me because they need a most advanced teacher like me, the enlightened ones, in deepest, darkest Africa. But the reality is, I teach that which I want to learn and thus want to remember. So I teach the non-dual. I teach towards the absolute. Am I there? If I was, you wouldn't be looking at me right now on the screen. And so that's my utmost desire. Seek ye first only the kingdom above all else. So I teach at that level. I've noticed Steve can dial into very different levels in one talk. Steve can go into objective challenges and bring you out of it through the non-dual, or Steve can keep you in the dualistic but give you advice and guidance. I've watched you, Leon, do the same. I've watched you in a single interview ask practical dualistic application questions, and in the same interview ask a total non-dual question. There seems to be levels. Is there really a level? No. But while we're awakening, just like REM sleep, beta, alpha, theta, you go into delta sleep and then you come back out of it, theta, alpha, beta. It seems to be levels. In truth, sleep is sleep, awake is awake. And we get glimpses of it, glimpses of eternity, echoes of eternity. Trying to explain it is pointless, cannot be explained, can only be experienced directly. But we can allude to it because we need signposts. Had it not been for the Jesus, Ramana Maharishi, Nisargadatta, Papa G, we wouldn't have had this. I wouldn't have had the signposts to get to my non-dual understanding. And so and I'm constantly learning, even when annoying little children bump into me and you want to give them a Jesus slap. That's my 10 cents worth.
I'll tell you what's interesting is like from a Ramana point of view, like they talk about the three states of being waking and then sleeping and then the form of sleeping where you're completely unconscious, for want of another word. So if I woke up and I'm in my waking state and then I tried to explain the experience of being in the deepest form of sleep where I'm not conscious, but I still exist, or I am, or whatever, it's impossible because you can't do it from that point of view.
You can't.
You're not within the same you're not within the same dimension, are you? You're in a sleeping dimension, if that's the right word, so to speak. It's like if you're dreaming at night, REM sleep, we actually dream of a figure, these clear dreams. Then someone in the dream turns around to you and says, "Oi, what's it like to be real?"
Yeah.
Now, what are you going to say to him? Well, it's sort of like you, except I'm sort of solid, but aren't I solid in this dream? He says back. And you say, "No, I'm actually dreaming you. I'm creating you." He says back, "Oh, you really? Then how comes I'm talking to you?" Well, that's because in my dream, I've somehow separated you into somebody separate from me. That's all right. So how do I get back to you? Well, I'm going to wake up soon and you'll be back with me. The similarities of this to the nighttime dreams are so bang on. It's just there. Yeah. In your nighttime dream, you'd think it's real until you wake up, unless you have a lucid dream. And lucid dreams are what we're trying to get to here. So we know we're dreaming when we're actually in the dream, but we know we are. We know that everything is actually made out of God, so to speak.
But ultimately, we vibration. Everything's energy. Energy in the dual dream seems like physical matter. It's all vibration. Voice is vibration. Sound. Chapter 8.6 says something like, the journey to God is without distance, a goal that has never changed. Truth cannot be explained. It can only be experienced. But it's natural for us to share it, primarily for self, as a reinforcement, because we're reinforcing it. And eventually it just goes quiet. And I can imagine you sit in the presence of a Papa G type person and just sitting silently in his silence, in his present moment awareness, you will sense, feel, experience that all-pervading present awareness just through the guiding light of Christ-mindedness that he's abiding in. And just in that instant, you will have that holy instant self, But we need words. And ultimately, if everything appears and disappears, appears in the dreaming mind of the Christ is in God, it's all appearing and disappearing in God. There's never not God. And so even though there appears to be levels or not, what does it really truly matter? No one's ever left the kingdom. There's no one other than one, dreaming all of this up. And eventually, all that level seems to do is take us through space-time to the collapsing of the strata, the hologram called universe, people, places, things, and events, into the knowing I am. That's the appearance of levels. The problem I have with the Christ mind, and I will have a word with my Christ mind when I get home, is you didn't use the word seeming enough. You made out as if it was real. The teachers of God have no set, teaching levels. Should have said, it seems as if the teachers of God. The teaching learning situation involves. No, you left out seems to involve.
Yeah.
It's a shame it went there when it was dictated.
Yeah.
You could have.
Well, maybe there wasn't a shorthand symbol for seams.
There's another part. There's another part here, like where it says, which refers back to what Luigi was saying a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one from whom a teacher of God cannot learn.
Yeah.
So there's no one whom he cannot teach. However, from a practical point of view, he cannot meet everyone, nor can everyone find him. Now he's saying, like, there's no one from whom a teacher of God cannot learn. I mean, you can learn from everybody, because all this about like having a choice whether to get angry or whether a choice to be loving or choose to understand. It's all too easy. So if you have someone in your life who rubs you up the wrong way a lot, if you learn to sort of like deal with them, learn not to get angry, learn to understand, then they are teaching you. They're not willing, they're not knowing they're teaching you. But it's like it says, sometimes in the book somewhere, it says every day is an opportunity to go out and forgive somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of going out and screaming out your window at some bloke who's just cut you up on the motorway, you just sort of like just slow down a bit and just realise, oh, well, off we go. It's about not getting angry. And reason why I'm so very happy and content in my life as I am, is because I very ever rarely get angry about anything, and there've been occasions like, situations where I could have got angry, but, it's the same as like it says in there that in cases like that, the ego, because it's the ego's world, this illusion, he'll jump in first and go, oh, listen here, you. But then you think, wait a minute. No. Let's look at this differently. And now before I come across the course, I was a very angry man, was a lot angrier than I am now. 20 years ago, I was into conspiracy stuff, or even no matter what you want to call it, and I was very angry at the world. I wanted to do something about it. I don't know what. I got in contact with a lot of people in those grounds, and I was talking about forming groups. And when I left the UK, I was like, oh, I'll leave you to it. But anyway, when I started traveling, I come across A Course in Miracles, and it totally changed me. All that conspiracy stuff and all that what will be, will be. I mean, I have my opinions on it, but they're not for here. And so what will be, But I realised the book taught me that I don't need to get angry about this stuff. It ain't really real.
Yeah, but what you're describing there, great example with traffic, because we can all relate to that. If you take that and posit it from a more universal standpoint, and you include the model of forgiveness that A Course in Miracles presents, which is this completely passive observation. You don't do forgiveness. There's no forgiveness is a remodeled term to describe the fact that you're just observing something without getting angry, without any fluctuations. So then involved in that is letting all things be exactly as they are. You're not trying to be the puppet master controlling the strings, because you've got an awareness of dreaming.
Yeah. Look, the only thing there's left to do, if you really have moved from anger to observation, and then it just the lightness of being, and nothing's getting taken too seriously, nothing's triggering you anymore. If you see a call for action, someone needs help, you jump in. And so all that there's left to do, and this is very, very serious, it's the only thing that should stay serious, is if you're constantly happy, then it's your duty to piss everybody else off. That they can practice forgiveness. Jesus told me that last night, because I was thinking about what to say to that.
I tell you what I realized today, which I found quite interesting, was like, one thing that affects my mood is being hungry. I can watch my patients. Like, my wife will say to me, there should be another word for patience with you, because it just doesn't cover it. You've just got this, ridiculous propensity for patience. And if I get hungry, then that ego voice will ramp up. And if I am driving, then I will hear that, you know, clearly, like, look at that idiot in that lane, look at them cut, you know, and I'll still won't act on it. I'll observe it. I'll think it's funny, but it's almost like gone up in volume because I'm hungry. And then when I looked at that from a purely materialistic perspective earlier, as an incentive, as a drive on an animalistic level for survival, I saw the context of it and thought, well, of course, you know, if you're an animal and you're really, really hungry, but you're not bothered about being hungry, then where's the drive for you to go and get the food you need to keep going? And it kind of like, weirdly, wasn't necessarily a spiritual kind of understanding that brought that to me, because it was just looking at the form in the world of form that just went, oh, well, of course, you need to get angry because that makes you, whether it's anger, I don't know, but you need to get tetchy something, because then it's like, I've got to solve this. Otherwise, you would just be like content to be really hungry until you died of starvation.
Well, hunger is sort of like a bit of a different policy to anger, isn't it, really? If you're hungry, you got to do something about it, you know. I'm sorry, I was listening to a bit of a drama going on here, distracting me. I'm sorry about that. You know, I mean, I didn't quite grab everything to say.
Right, press stop. We're all going home.
Well, that's made me really angry right now.
Yeah, me
well,
too.
it's.
I'm really angry for a pizza right now.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood all that. Like, you know.
Hey, you know, ultimately, and anger. Listen, you know, there was nobody more angry than me in this world, so I claim to be the angriest of us all, and I claim that. So I still feel it rise every now and again, especially when I see physical injustice and harming of others and innocents and children. But I'm a guy that acts. I see something, I act. I don't sit and post things and, ooh, I take a side and I'm with this country versus that country. If I really see something that I believe needs love, everything's a call for love or an act of love. So if I see a cry for love, I act. I don't sit and talk about it. Blah, 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 yak, 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 type about it, post, ooh, I support so-and-so, I'm anti so-and-so. Hey, if you really see an evil happening in the world, which is just a call for love or a lack of awareness of love, act. And sometimes when under attack, if you've ever been in a situation like that, the bullets are flying, you got to stay calm, but sometimes in close quarter combat, you have to grr. It's the only way you survive.
Yeah.
But recognize this, Holy Son of God, you're dreaming all of this up. The word I use for dream conscious is content is consciousness. Everything's happening in consciousness, the consciousness of the dream. The awake Son of God is pure awareness. As the voice for God calls us to return to remembrance, to remembering ourselves, remembering the Christ we are, remembering the extension of God's love we are. In that present moment awareness, we respond. Now, sometimes we respond from love in a gentle, kind, compassionate way. Sometimes you have to get grr and act and appear to get angry to sort out certain situations. Remember, all of it is happening in consciousness. All of it's happening in pure awareness. So anger as awareness. Awareness is anger. Anger through awareness. Anger as awareness. Anger in awareness. It's all awareness. Once you recognize the holy I am, full stop. God is, full stop. And you recognize I'm dreaming. And I've projected and localized as Grumpy Lou, who's chosen to be a voice for God, who's chosen to serve his brothers. And he's got skills. So he acts from a place of love. There's no judgment. The problem comes in when you catch yourself and now you're judging yourself for having offered love in whichever way you're scripted to do. like Leon sitting in his truck waiting for an unsuspecting lady with a milkshake and eggs to walk past him so he can honk on. Scared the bejesus out of her, and she might have a holy instant there and then and laugh, and it's all over. For feather silence, and she evaporates into the heavens. We're all going to play out in our specific way. There's a reason why I'm in South Africa, not Australia, Europe, America. There's a call here. There's a projection here. The judgment of the anger is important. When you act from love and you catch yourself, you were angry or unreasonable, or you responded to in an angry way or traffic, whatever the case is, catch yourself. Present moment awareness. Take a deep breath, gratitude, present, aware, realize, forgive instantly, self and others. That's it. That's the appearance of levels. That's the appearance of transcending. That's present moment awareness. That's what it's about. Will this character ever get to a point where it's not angry? I have no idea. Hell, I hope so. I can tell you that today I'm 100 million times to the power of 8 less angry than I was.
Well, I tell you this, you're angry. The anger that you're talking about, like Grumpy Lewis, actually is very charming. You know, the way you teach, and you've got a lot of people following you. And like we said, always there's a different teacher for every student. Well, you're a teacher for a lot of students. And so your underlying anger, although it's not an earthly, although it's an earthly thing, is actually very charming and attractive.
But wait, get between me and my cigarettes, and you're going to wish to God you never did.
Well, there you go. There you go. I mean, like when I first saw you on Lloyd and Steph's show, you know, when you were smoking and throwing fucks around and this, that, and the other, I thought, where is this bloke? I thought, this is great. Because it was different. It was different, you know, it was, you're reaching a certain type of person who appreciates that. I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, I've got my own way of teaching, but I can't teach the same way as you do. That's your job. That's how you do it, you know, and it's very good.
Look, a lot of it's for effect. I hardly ever swear until I'm teaching. It's quite weird. It's let's not tell the listeners that, but I'm actually quite polite and rounded off most of the time. Other than when I'm leading a bunch of bikers or when I'm teaching. And I do that very often for effect, and hence the PG 33 plus. But very often it's also just to bring the awareness of, hang a second, this is nothing special, no special teachers, no, oh, look at this teacher is at that level, you know. We should actually create a rank order level of teachers. And we could start with Eckhart Tolle and David Hofmeister and you know, and start rank ordering them and say, okay, if you really
title.
If you're ready here, you
the world champion teacher.
But if you're ready for the 10th rung of the ladder, then you've got to listen to.
Yeah. Well, I tell you something. Sorry, like, you know, I was just going to say, someone as well respected as Ken Wapnick. I mean, like everybody loves Ken. He's very well respected, Ken Wapnick. I've watched a few of his lectures, but a lot of people don't like him. And I couldn't sort of like, why don't I think it's the only thing I can think of why you can't like Ken Wapnick, who is a great teacher, is that not his university lecturer type style isn't everybody's cup of tea. Yeah. You know, and it's people, you know, there's some students who just totally disregard him.
He's not flowery enough for some people.
Yeah. It's just like he's not airy fairy either. He's very like he's like a lecturer, university lecturer. That's how he does it. I think that's what he was. I think that's what he does for a living. So it's not surprising. But he's very good. You know, he really is good.
Oh, for me, Ken was definitely the foundation. I listened to Ken for several years, and what challenged me about Ken in the beginning was just too much Jesus speak. And then in one of his lectures, when he really went into there is no Jesus, there's only pure awareness, there's only Christ mind, there's only extension of God, I got what he was doing. I realized he was teaching and dialing in. He had the ability to dial into the different levels. Ken is a perfect example of different level type teaching. He could dial into a brand new person who's just moved out of Christian happy bappy church, and he needs still feeling a little guilty about abandoning Jesus, so he needs the Jesus talk. And the next thing he would talk in Christ mind, and then he would be talking completely non-dual. Can have that ability and patience. I don't. Ken was a nice guy. I'm not. Don't you fucking forget that.
How could we? Dear me.
A constant reminder.
So what I'd like to look at here is I've underlined the bit where it says, even at the level of the most casual encounter, it's possible for two people to lose sight of separate interests, if only for a moment. That moment will be enough. Salvation has come. And I'm thinking back to the first, probably maybe the first episode or second episode, certainly, where we're looking at the qualifications for a teacher for God just simply being that moment where you realize that your interests were not separate from someone else's, and how that is being interwoven into this as well, and showing that again it's just that core principle in a different wrapper, which is saying all that happened is you didn't lose sight of separate interests. And it makes me think of a smile. I like to smile at strangers, and because I'm walking the dog, it's funny, when you got a dog, it gives you a bit more permission. People don't feel as freaked out to sort of look at you and make eye contact and smile. And the currency of that smile, that transaction, is beautiful. There's something that happened last weekend, and walking along the beach, the dog ran up to someone. She stroked the dog. I smiled at her. She smiled back. Really genuine, beautiful, defenseless smile. Then the dog and I walked ahead of her, and by the time we turned around and come the other way, we met eyes once more. And because we'd had that experience, then it was okay to make eye contact again and smile again. And it was just such a lovely, it was completely full, and it had no, it didn't need to go anywhere other than in those moments where we shared that same interest of just acknowledgement and smiling at each other, and the safety and the respect and just the whole deal on that front. And it always makes me think of Crosby, Stills and Nash lyrics, where they said, if you smile at me, I will understand, because that is something everybody everywhere does in the same language.
That's good one. Here in America, the people are very prone to say good morning to each other. If I go for a walk, as I do occasionally, round a few blocks, anyone I meet on the way, they always smile and say hello. Not so much in the UK. The UK is much more reserved. Sort of like there's nodding. But here in the UK, they're much more sort of like open to saying, greeting each other as they pass, And as I said before, like I when I do go out to a supermarket or we're out anywhere, if I remember to, I bless everybody I see under my breath. And that's sort of keeping that, but that's sort of to keep a connection, with a mental connection with the world around me, like, a loving connection with them.
I tend to do that on behalf of someone as well. If I'm driving along and I see someone who looks despondent, who looks like they're beaten down, who whatever, and I'm just looking at them and remembering their perfection and their safety on behalf of them, and thinking, love you, you are loved, you're safe, dude, don't worry.
Yeah. You should go to your local Catholic church and get some holy water and put it into a water pistol.
Yeah, it's easy to do. You only go like this. You get the water and you go, I bless you, I bless you, I bless you. It's really easy, And then
squirty.
Yeah. Well, I think I haven't said that though. I might be talking about my station now. I think you might need to be qualified to do that. I bless you. I don't know, but as a son of God, I think I've got the qualifications.
Well, as long as it makes their skin blister, we know it's all right.
Holy water. Come to South Africa, everybody greets you.
You throw it out, I suppose.
South African culture specifically, which 11 different cultures, but it's very African to greet. You walk into a room, you walk up to a shop assistant in a shop in South Africa. You don't just ask for something. You first say, hi, how are you? And they'll say, fine, thank you very much. How are you? And you say, good. And then you ask, where do you keep the tomato soup? You know? And if you don't, people will call you on it in South Africa. They'll go, hello, good day to you too. You know, so we have that culture in South Africa. It's quite amazing, you know.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's great.
And then, of course, we type all sorts of stuff and hate each other on the mail. But,
but that's nice.
Those chance encounters. Let me tell you a story. A friend told me yesterday, and she phoned because it was a stormy day in her mind, and I just listened, and she told me her story about the challenges she had gone through, and she traveled, and it was exams, and it wasn't easy. They had a tough 2, 3 days, and in between that, she witnessed a mother dropping off her daughter on a street corner, and the kid was going to a karate dojo. And this friend of mine knew that the dojo was closed, and this little 8-year-old girl ran to the dojo. And by the time she realized it was closed, her mother had driven off. And so she stopped her car. My friend stopped her car and approached this young girl and said, hey, are you okay? And the little girl was quite emotional, and my friend offered to help her. Anyway, long story short, she helped her. She said, well, let me take you to your mommy or to a friend. And the little girl said, no, my mommy said you mustn't talk to strangers. And so my friend went out of her way to make sure that she was comfortable and went and got some help and brought a familiar friend around and eventually helped the kid. And she had just gone from telling the story of her terrible 3 days and traveling around the world. And then she told this little story of helping this little girl. And I said to her, hang a second, stop, just stop for a second. Tell me how you felt when you were helping this little girl. And were you thinking about the miserable 3 days? And she went, no. I said, do you realize that in your moment of just service, you saw the situation, you intuitively picked up what was going on, you realized that little girl was on her own, 8-year-old little girl. You stopped your car, you put whatever you were rushing to do aside, and you jumped out to help. And you recognize that when you jumped to help, you weren't thinking, you just acted from a place of love. And you realize that in that moment, there was no horrible days or 3 days prior. You were simply present moment awareness and service, chance encounter. And I actually took her to this section, which I'd read the day before because we were going to discuss it today. And immediately I could sense her just go into presence. And that was the lesson. 3 days of hell and replaying it and getting angry and beating herself up. And just one moment into going into a chance encounter where she was fully present and her whole mood just settled and lifted. That's it. And how often do we miss these? Oh, do we miss in awareness the fact that we're constantly serving, constantly helping? Most course students are constantly helping, constantly serving, and yet we beat ourselves up because of the apparent shitty things that happen in the world. If we could just go be present and recognize how spirit works through us all the time, you're already awake to self. You've chosen to follow this non-dual path. You've found the Course in Miracles. You're 90%, 99% home. Stop every now and again and recognize all these beautiful encounters you've had throughout your day, throughout your life, where you've just been present and you've served. And if you can just stay present with that, your life shifts. And now for a shitty, grumpy story. You guys ready?
Not another one.
Ah.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because, when it says each teaching learning situation is maximal. And if we look at these like 5 paragraphs, we say sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that, sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. But actually, it's never like this or like that. It's always just like this. It seems to be on this level or that level. And I think, it is that same principle of what you're describing with your friend, Lou, is like getting that perspective to see the constant, the unchanged element of what's going on.
Yes.
Connecting with that, because that's the counterpoint to being consumed by all of the apparent fluctuations and all the differences. And again, coming back to say Ramana or Nisargadatta is like, I know Steve, you and I have spoken about this before. It's like the qualifications for the eternal is what's unchangeable, the changelessness.
Yes.
Is that's the standpoint that enables you to sort of dissect something. You know, to be able to look at the changes, there has to be a changelessness. And to be able to discard them, there has to be the memory of the changelessness, even if it is like from earlier, you know, you're talking about being asleep from the perspective of being awake, and it is impossible within the different camps. You can still point to it, you can still sense that memory and that feeling. And if you're going from what you're saying, Lou, is like awareness, consciousness, and then pure being in the present moment, that's like a bridge consciousnness, which enables you to bring the properties of being in deep sleep, where you are conscious but you're not conscious, to the waking state where you are conscious.
Yeah, and Steve just gave a perfect example when he was saying, you know, he was really angry and now he's not. How would he know unless he's been through it? I mean, why would you seek out for silent stillness unless you've been exposed to noise? We need that dualistic element in order to seek out our natural state of being. Silent stillness, joyous being, extension of light. But we need the diversity, we need the ugliness, we need the darkness in order to seek out the light in our dream of duality. That beautiful line, perhaps the best way to demonstrate that these levels cannot exist, is simply to say that any level of teaching, learning, of the teaching learning situation is part of God's plan for atonement. And his plan can have no levels. Being a reflection of his will, salvation is always ready and always there. But while we dream, it seems to happen.
Well, in a world of duality, you're going to have like negative. Well, like you said, negativity makes you appreciate the positivity, and positivity makes you realize that negativity is there. You know, it's like we live it. We try to keep a balance of ourselves. You know, our life is a balanced view, isn't it? What hangs in front of us is a picture of likes and dislikes. He said this was backed up in Nisargadatta the other day. I was reading that. I've always said this. You carry a picture around. I'd like this. I don't like that. That looks like that. That likes this. That does this. That does that. And you walk around with this picture. When you pass on, the picture goes with you. That was your way of looking at it. And that's why when in the book he says you can be one man can heal the world. One man can heal his world because that's his world as he sees it. You know, as it goes on, like, you know, it needs more than one man because where does it say that? Somewhere it says like a student can't be everywhere. It says no one, however, from a practical point of view, he cannot meet everyone, nor can everyone find him. So that's why you've got to have a lot of teachers, you know, to finally clear the world, which is going to be a long way off, I should think. Like, you know, but if you can clear your world, you're well ahead in the overall effect of awakening. You know, it's like they say these guys sitting in a cave in the Himalayas, as Yogananda talks about, Maharshi, they're sitting in the Himalayas doing more good than the greatest philanthropist in the world because he's putting love out into the world. And people don't even know he's there, but he's doing a great good. I mean, we could be sitting in the living rooms and doing the same thing. You don't have to be in a cave in the Himalayas. That's what Nisargadatta, he was halfway there when he turned around and come back home again.
Yeah.
Got better of it. And he was doing just a greater job sitting in his living room in Bombay, you know. Yeah.
Well, you know, 6 lifetimes ago, when I was an ascended master in China,
right,
and I found the cave, I promised myself that I would, in future incarnations, ensure I stay in warm climates because the fucking cave is cold and miserable.
Especially in the winter. I don't know about eating.
Something I want to draw attention There's that beautiful line towards the end. They may even be quite hostile to each other for some time and perhaps for life. And I remember when I did my regression work way back when I really did believe the spirit world was real, ultimate reality. And I was doing this regression work, and obviously I case studied. It became my first book, A School Called Earth. And the very first time I met this type of soul, and he had said to me that his closest spirit being soul, in other words, his soulmate, and him had been greatest enemies for 3 lifetimes in a row because their greatest lessons were in the adversity towards each other.
Right.
And in all 3 lifetimes prior to this one, they had ended up both killing each other simultaneously. They both stabbed each other the first lifetime. They both shot each other the second lifetime. And they both rammed their trucks into each other in the third lifetime back in the States. Wow. And in this lifetime, they became business partners and couldn't stand to be with each other in the same room. And his wife had suggested he came for a regression, and he came. And in that regression, where he traveled back to the spirit world, first secret dream, recognizing his soulmate had been his friend in lifetimes after lifetimes, been married before in lifetimes. He there and then, when he woke up, when he came out of the hypnotherapy session, had made a decision, contacted his enemy partner friend, shook hands, agreed to disagree, and sold his shares to this mate of his, and walked away. And I got a call from him a couple of years later. By then, I'd closed my practice. I wasn't doing the regression work anymore. And just a call. He was traveling in Australia, Steve, and he'd bought himself a combi and now learned to play the guitar. And he was traveling around. Didn't need the money, just traveling around Australia. And just out of the blue, phoned me to say he just received a phone call from his friend who was now dying, his ex-partner, and they had forgiven each other, and he just wanted to thank me for the regression, you know. And in this lifetime, together, they figured out, even though they'd been enemies, it had pushed them to excel. They both became multi-billionaires, and he could now spend the rest of his life traveling around Australia, helping the homeless, and helping whoever he came across, because he had the wherewithal to do it, and the realization of we had to do that in order to do this. And that was beautiful. What a beautiful lesson.
Amazing.
Please do not phone me for regressions. I do not do them anymore. It's all bullshit. There is no spirit world.
Well, funny enough, can I just say?
Yeah.
I've never been regressed. I haven't been in a situation of being regressed, but I went to a medium come to a retreat I was staying at in New Zealand. And she told me that me and my first wife had never been here before. She said, we were here on a mission. This is when I first started training. She says, you're here on a mission. She says, your wife came here with you to make, because to be the sort of bloke you have to be, your wife came with you to lead you through that first part of your life. And now she's gone and you've got to carry on with your mission. And I thought, well, that's okay. I've never been here before. She says, you're from high up on the other side. Now, I don't know what she meant by that at all, because I don't believe there is any high ups or lows on the other side. And oneness. There's no high ups or anything like that. I don't see how that could be, but then I can't remember anything about it. But she must be talking about the afterlife, the astral, so to speak, the dream afterlife.
In the secret dream, there are levels. Yeah, in the secret dream, there are levels, just like there are levels. In the secret, let me rephrase that. In the secret dream, there are levels. Spirit world, secret dream 1, there are levels. In the same way that there appears to be levels in this dream world. So there appears to be levels in the dream world, secret dream, spirit world, and in the physical world, duality. But they're all levels in dream state. In awake state, it's non-dual. Yeah. So and we mustn't write off those stories, because they can very often be very helpful, because it makes us realize we're all interconnected. But I've chosen to put that stuff aside. I've done that work 20 years ago. I now teach purely onto the non-dual.
And you do it well.
Well, I find it easier to insult people from a non-dual perspective than if I'm talking spiritual.
I went
Well,
I went to see a psychic and they were laughing, like couldn't stop laughing. So I just reached over and slapped them across the face, and they opened their eyes and they were like, "What the hell did you do that for?" And I said, "Well, I was always taught to try and strike a happy medium."
Oh my God.
Gotcha.
And we've been friends ever since.
Strike a medium today.
Look, I do not like being called a medium because I'm rather short for a South African, and so that triggers my anger. There's nothing medium about me.
Yeah, never mind, anger's never justified unless they're talking about that.
Yeah, a medium at large.
Yeah.
Well, I'm only 5'7", so I'm pretty medium.
What have you got for us from Nisargadatta this week, Steve?
Oh yeah, when we spoke about this the other day, I thought, yeah, I'll find a reading from it. And you know, there's so much good stuff in here.
Is
I mean,
that?
I've been highlighting it from start to finish, and every page I open is something in it. And I settled on one thing. I thought, yeah, I'll read that. And just this morning when I opened it to read it, it fell open somewhere else, and I thought, no, I'll read that.
Nice.
So because it's so, and it's funny enough, it's sort of like more to do with Maharshi's "Who am I?" and combines it with his "I am" thing. And it's just this paragraph. It is in the question. So let's get this in place. In the question, "Who am I?" the I is not known, and the question can be worded as, "I do not know what I mean by I. What you are, you must find out. I can only tell you what you are not. You are not of this world. You're not even in the world. The world is not. You alone are. You create the world in your imagination like a dream. As you cannot separate the dream from yourself, so you cannot have an outer world independent of yourself. You are independent, not the world. Don't be afraid of a world you yourself have created. Cease looking for happiness and reality in a dream, and you will wake up. You need not know all the why and how. There is no end to questions. Abandon all desires. Keep your mind silent, and you shall discover. And I thought that was absolutely splendidly well put in its simplistic fashion. It makes it all sound really easy to waking up, and a lot of Nisargadatta stuff, especially towards the end of it. It seems to be structured. I don't know who put that. I read about who translated it, but it seems to be put together. Like when I first started off with it, I started highlighting it, like a few bits on a page here and there. By the end, I'm colouring it all in. Yeah. You know, it's a remarkable piece of work. And basically all it's really saying is to say, I am, you know, as we three of us know, you know, it says, I am. But the key is the amness. The amness, like as God is, I am. What is my amness? An amness. You get, and I've been sort of getting a real buzz off combining the three of them, like, you know, like I was saying, what's his name, Vivekananda with his I am he, stand on the mountain and declare I am he, you know. Oh, it's great stuff, all that. Like, anyway, who am I? I am he who am. And that really gets me. I haven't got to the stage I want to be at, but that'll happen when it's due. But it's getting, you know, that really gives me a comfort. That who am I? I am he who am. I am. Yeah. Oh. So that's why I read that out, because I thought that was a good one to conclude on, perhaps. Any thoughts on that passage?
Nisargadatta had the ability, I mean, just in a single sentence, just bring you to total silence.
Yeah.
I mean, I am that. I am that I am. I am that. What is that? I am.
It's very powerful.
It's phenomenal. You know, I think it's I can't remember. I think it's verse 48. In the pursuit of learning every day, something is acquired. In the pursuit of the Tao, in other words, present moment awareness or God, in the pursuit of God every day, something is dropped. Something is abandoned.
Oh, I've read that last week. Yeah.
So we just less is less is less is less. Be still and know I am.
I am.
That I am
The
is
stillness.
that is the recognition of our true self. Are you awake? I am. Are you aware? There's no one that's not aware. The problem is we think spiritual awareness and being aware is different. It's all awareness. You wouldn't know you're seeking for awareness if you weren't awareness itself. You wouldn't seek to know self and God if you weren't already aware. You wouldn't be seeking for the kingdom unless there was already awareness. You are awareness. Stop
There's
the
your
seek.
proof.
Yeah.
There's your
Stop.
essential proof. You're here, aware of this. You're here, you're aware. You're now. You're aware. You're already aware. It's about getting back, getting past you. Like the mind brings the body is brought about by the mind is brought about by consciousness, and the consciousness is brought about. The consciousness is observed by your awareness, the witness, as he calls it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who are you?
Principles.
I am. Are you aware? I am. What are you aware of? I am. Who are you? I am. It's the ultimate teaching.
The ultimate answer.
In that awareness, all the levels fall away, and there's just present moment I amness.
I can
And
feel
then you
that
become
actually.
like Leon.
I can feel
You become
that.
like Leon, you invite us to a talk, and then you say nothing.
I am.
He just smiles.
I seem to have a problem with my mic. What I'm just thinking about then is my increasing experience of not thinking, and how there's a natural attraction to this state, and how maybe it's taken me like 5 years in the current drive, if you like, or part of the journey, where I've made myself put time aside to just sit and become acquainted with the experience of being quiet, and how it took probably 3 of those 5 years before you could get a cigarette paper between two thoughts and then actually be aware that you were experiencing being without thinking momentarily, and then how to identify with that and to expand upon it, and then to look at something like Ramana Maharshi's teachings, where he'll say, you know, your mind is fixated upon journeying outward, but once you withdraw your investment in believing that you want to follow that journey, the mind adjusts itself to come back inside and to be quiet, because it's following you as the driver of the vehicle. But you still have to present that experience that of being in the quiet, so that the mind latches on to what it is that you're pursuing. And then, you know, these periods now of not thinking getting larger and larger, and just how much freedom there is in that experience, to the point where a few weeks ago I've been doing tiling somebody's bathroom, and I completed this entire bathroom. And then at the point of grouting, it became evident that there was 10 or 15 tiles that had tiny little cracks in the glaze, and I didn't see them, and you wouldn't be able to see them until you tried to put a darker color grout that got stuck in this little hairline crack. Long story short, lots of convoluted backing and forth in with manufacturers and distributors and clients, and somebody wanting to take responsibility and someone not wanting to take responsibility. I had to smash apart the entire room that I'd completed so that I could start again with a new tile. which was strange in itself. But right in the midst of all of it, when I had quite a substantial club hammer and a chisel, and I was smashing this work down, it's like effectively destroying what I'd created. And I had this most incredible, pure experience of just really, really being that presence, of being silent in the moment, the holy instant. And then upon reflection, I thought, well, how interesting is that? You know, I haven't had to climb to the top of a mountain and see the sun set across the Himalayas whilst listening to panpipes and being fed fine delicacies. Here I am hitting a chisel with a hammer, and this moment is absolutely incredible and blissful and perfect and pure. And yeah,
it's better than getting angry. It's better than getting angry. I mean, like I told you, you've got to take a wall down you just created. I mean, it does tend to trigger something, doesn't it? But anyway, talking about it, I just want to say earlier on, but I forgot about it, was like somewhere in the book, it says like it's okay to get angry because this is his world. But just don't hang on to it. Just roll with it, you know. You know, I used to get years ago, like I used to get attacks of guilt and all that. It used to last for weeks sometimes. You know, life I've had. But I learned that the course taught me how to deal with that. You know, like there's no, if you see everything with a fresh eye, see it just as it is, you know, in stillness, you get in there, you know, the closest you can get to that, you know.
Yeah. The beauty there, I mean, Leon, is take yourself back a year, 5, 10, put yourself in the exact same scenario. How would you have acted? And
yeah, there definitely have been those moments.
And the recognition that although it's taking time, I hope it didn't cost you more money, but the fact, even if it did, a trip to the Himalayas, sitting in a cave for 3 months, you know, on icy cold floor, the cost to bring you into that present moment awareness in the past could have cost you lifetimes. Now all it took was one bathroom. Isn't that beautiful?
Mm.
The acceleration, the next level until there's no level, the next rung of Ken's ladder.
Yeah.
One step closer to closer than close, one step inwards, another step inwards, one more step inwards until there's no more steps. And there's just this gentle falling back into the arms of grace.
Yeah.
We're so grateful in this lifetime to have found this beautiful material. And the social media, the very fact that we have this channel, the fact that we access information, lifetimes and lifetimes of our fractured selves, our brothers that have come before us, condensed into minutes and hours. And in minutes and hours, we're able to assimilate memory that brings us into the present and brings us into transcendence without having to leave the comfort of our little homes. Where would we need to go? Where would you need to go?
Where would you need to go?
Peace of mind is already here now. Where would you?
I think I've been resting as well a lot this week with going back to what we were saying last time with your phrase of the infinite lightness of being, and talking about pouring yourself into what you do. You know, we had that beautiful conversation around there's no levels between whether somebody is doing one job or another or whatever it might be. And then just sitting with this contemplation of, like, I think it's like an Alan Watts kind of phrase, where Alan Watts sort of used to say that human beings are like the apertures through which the universe observes itself.
Yes.
And then I'm thinking, about this idea of like the infinite lightness of being is on one side, for example, just for the sake of conversation, of say like a veil, and then there's a tiny little pinhole in that veil. So therefore, only a small amount of light can get through the veil because of the diameter of the pinhole. But then through experience, through bringing attention to that pinhole, through discarding pursuits that take you away from that pinhole, you are increasing the diameter of that aperture. And as a direct consequence of that, more light can come through the veil to the point where you can then pour more light into what it is that you're doing, which is experiencing being in a dream state with other quote unquote beings. And if your aperture is bringing more light, then the strength of that presence on behalf of someone else saying, what is that? What is that I can see in you? It's like, it's not me, it's you, it's us, it's the light, it's all there. There is no veil, there is no pinhole, there's no hole as wide as a tunnel or whatever. It's the veil doesn't exist, but
because if you can see it in me, it must be in you, or you wouldn't see it.
yeah.
And actually, you're not seeing, you're knowing it. This week, the beginning of this week, I did a talk to a corporate group. I was doing a talk on the neuroscience of selling. Big corporate group, everybody in their suits and ties, and the very next day, same time, I was doing a workshop session for a group of very technically hands-on mechanical engineer type people. And a day later, I was in a group of nutritionists and pharmacists and homeopaths doing a session with them. Three very different mindsets, three different levels of this world. And at the end of each session, sitting amongst them, having a meal and having a coffee and and I just went silent, observed this whole thing, and you just see the beauty of the infinite lightness of being, regardless of what levels in the world, or financial levels, academic levels, all of that nonsense we've labeled, and the pure essence of being is everywhere. Just the beautiful essence of being. And today was helping a friend. Today was Labor Day, and it was carrying boxes. And for me, it would have been easy. I could have, hired labor and had them pick up boxes and carry. And I chose to physically go and do the work myself. And it was a beautiful day. And then you realize it. We buy into all of these silly concepts and levels and hierarchy and the rich and the super rich and whatever. Hey, it's beingness. Be present. And you'll meet whatever you need to meet. And you'll find the wisdom in the most, and you'll find the beauty, and you'll find the love in the most unexpected places when you're open to receiving. That's it. And know that it's your inheritance, and therefore thy will be done. It's as simple as that. Yeah, we are. Three of us from three different places in the world, different backgrounds, different experiences, different educations, different continents, and we found each other, and we're just having this radio conversation, and whoever's listening to us has got us in the background. Instead of listening to the radio, they're listening to us, and they're reminding themselves we are one lightness of being. That's it. We are the Christ, awakening to self. The light has come.
Beautiful.
It has. The light is here to stay.
But in case anyone forgets, I am at the highest level of teaching.
I don't think we could forget.
How could I forget?
If I
But you
constantly
keep reminding me.
He keeps wearing that garland with all the flowers around it, doesn't he? Around his
Yeah,
head.
ascended master. At the end of the day, I am Luigi, the ascended one.
Well, next week, if we could all choose a different coloured robe before we press record, that would be interesting to see who gets the highest level. Really, I think purple is supposed to be one of the colours of the
Purple Pope. Yes, the purple Pope color. I may have ascended by next week, so I don't know if I'll attend, but I'll.
Well, if there's a space, if there's an empty space where you used to be,
I can feel the planets aligning at the moment, and Uranus is straight up Jupiter's bum. I may have ascended by next week, Friday, 9 p.m.
Right, I'll meet you there. Okay.
Until next time, gentlemen.
Cheers, my brothers.
Okay, then. That's been I've really enjoyed the chat. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I'll see you all next week. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.